My love of motorcycles started from about 4 years old. My dad bought us a little scrambler, it was myself and my brother. Basically just put us on it and threw us down a hill. I think that's really where my love of adventure came from, was from those moments, was from that sort of childhood bliss of jumping on an engine, pulling back a throttle and just going. When I was around 15, I bought a bike with some friends that my mum never knew about. The Honda H100. We had a farmer that had a like a lay-by lane that ran along his farm. It was about a mile-long stretch of tarmac. We just used to blast up and down there. I just remember full throttle, which on a Honda H100 is about 60 miles an hour. It's not that fast. I went to grab the front brake and it snapped. And then all I had was my back brake, and I was just heading towards this farmer's gate. And I think I hit it at maybe 40, 45, and it just somersaulted me over the top. Landed on my ass. The bike was absolutely written off. My brother and the mates that we'd all collected to buy the bike weren't bothered about me. It was just like, what have you done? You broke the bike. I came home with a bit of a bloody nose and a bit of a limp, and Mum was like, what's happened? I was like, actually, I've fallen off my push bike. And I was just sitting there in my bed and I just went white as a sheet. And it was like, I'd never experienced like an aftershock. And it was awful. And I had to sort of call my mum. I was like, Mum, I just feel a bit sick, a bit weird. And bikes are there for fun. They're there to help inspire adventure and awe and everything, but you have to respect them as well.
Do you think maybe you had a concussion?
Quite possibly had a concussion, yeah. Yeah, it could have been. I mean, the helmet that we had, I mean, we're talking, what are we now, early 2000s. We would have bought the helmet or borrowed it off of someone or found it in a skip. Yeah, could have had a concussion from that, quite possibly. I got to about 31. I knew I needed to get back into bikes. I'd really missed it for about a good 8-9 years. And that's when I got into enduro. That's when I got into off-road. I got what was my sort of ultimate enduro bike was a Gas EC250. And that was a 250 two-stroke Spanish brand Gas, now owned by KTM. And it was just light, it was nimble, it was torquey, it was amazing. It allowed me to sort of do everything I really wanted to do. I did a lot of enduros locally, but I also competed in the Dawn to Dusk race in Wales, which is a 24-hour enduro. I did that 2 years on a row, and that was really something. That was 18-mile laps in the Welsh hills, Brecon Beacons, in and around Merthyr Tydfil. And you're just out there on your own, for 18 miles, and then you come back to your van. And with it being Wales, it was never dry. So it was always just a crazy challenge of water, mud, rocks, river crossings, and the ruts throughout the day, and the race just got deeper and deeper and deeper. So, you could be going up a hill that was rutted, just trying to paddle your way through, and yeah, really, really fond memories of that. I kind of have two loves when it comes to the outdoors, and one is mountains and one is motorbikes. And I kind of found this love for mountaineering. I used to do a lot of running. I did triathlons and running and things like that, but I always loved to be outside. I need to be outside. That's something in my core. I did an event in La Palma called Transvolcania, and it was running up a volcano from sea level to, I think it was 2,500 meters, and it was a half marathon. And it nearly bloody killed me, but it was sort of the first real experience of running up a marathon, up a mountain, or this time being a volcano. And they had this Sky series that if you did this race, you could enter into other races. But at that point, I was starting to fall out of love with running, but loved the mountaineering side. So I set myself a challenge. I wanted to climb the highest peak in Europe, being Mont Blanc. So I went out to Chamonix, and it's kind of a moving in meditation when you're in the mountains for me. We climbed Gran Paradiso first, which is in Italy, which is a 4,000 meter peak. Did that at the start of the week, and then we went on and we did Mont Blanc later in the week. And that was 5,000 meters. Not a technical challenge, but that just really whet my appetite. Just feeling elated, feeling alive, just really, really alive. For me, Nepal, Tibet, that region has always been something that I've just been a lifelong dream to get to. So I planned a trip to Nepal to basically look at climbing Lostay, which is sort of just above Kilimanjaro from an altitude point of view. But what I got wrong was the amount of time needed. You need about 20 days. And in the life that we all lead with work and school and children, and I just can't take 20 days for myself. But I had this eureka moment, why don't I go from mountaineering to motorbiking? For me, it was like, if I'm gonna do this, I wanna do it right. I wanna be as less on the tarmac as possible. I wanna ride as solo as possible. I don't wanna really be held back too much. Contacted 7, 8 different agencies. They were all sort of, it's 60-40 road on off-road, or you've got to be with a group and a support vehicle, that limits where we go. And then I found one agency, Ride Nepal, and they're quite a small agency. They're made from 3 people, Takeshi, Grace, and Uday. Uday is this small but mighty bundle of energy that came out of the army to be a yoga teacher. He came to the UK by being in the army, and had basically met Grace via being a yoga teacher, and that's how they met. And Grace has always been a bit of an adventurer as well, and so she wanted to move to Nepal with him, and so they moved back to Nepal. But Uday had always had a lifelong friend called Takeshi, and Takeshi is basically the first Japanese person to be born in Nepal. And they just have a love for motorbikes, all 3 of them, and they take people on these crazy adventures. They go off to Tibet, they go to the Ruby Valley, up to 12 riders with a support vehicle. But they'll also answer the call of people like me that want to do something a little bit different. They're willing to take that risk. And they said, look, we don't have that ride in our schedule, in our calendar, but we could do it for you. You're just going to have no support vehicle, you and one guide, and it's going to be a recce because we've never done it. So we don't fully map out the route. We'll head to certain villages where we know are mountain passes and jeep tracks and off-road tracks, but we'll be making it up as we go. And we'll probably have to stay in people's houses. Maybe we'll be able to find hostels or mountain huts, but it's going to be rough. It's going to be rugged. Sign me up. That's it. That's what I want. That's exactly what I need. Kathmandu was a real sort of for the senses, the smells, the sights, the taste of the dirt, just walking around, And one of the prerequisites of riding in Kathmandu is you need to wear a face mask, not just because of the dirt, but because of the engine and the smog and everything. So it really wakes you up. And the journey started with just a recce around Kathmandu, get used to the bike, get to know Takeshi a little bit, and just to see a few wonders of Kathmandu. We rode around the city. You have to just push out. Don't hesitate. If you hesitate, that's it. Someone will hit you. You've really got to just go. Navigating the city, on road, but this crazy wilderness of urban jungle, if you want to call it that way. And we went and saw some beautiful temples, and you just see a whole different side of the world. There's so much spirituality. That's what I was looking for as well. For me, it wasn't just a journey of adventure and awe from the mountains. It was a bit of almost a spiritual quest to maybe even refine myself a little bit. My bike was called Sagamatha, which actually in Nepalese means Everest. I had to get all my kit into one 40-litre travel bag on the back of the bike. It was really minimal because, whatever weighed the bike down would change the handle in, so to keep it really light. It took about an hour and a half to get out of Kathmandu, and we left in rush hour, so that was something I'd rather forget. I think some people have a fear of riding off-road, the loose rubble, the rough and running around. No, my fear is riding in that traffic in tarmac with people just heading at you. It wasn't pleasant, but an experience all the same. When you're out, very quickly you start to see the undulation, and it's just stunning. So within an hour and a half, we hit our first Jeep track. And then for 10 days, I never hit a bit more tarmac. That was it. It was just rock, sand, jungle, rubble, river crossings for the next 10 days. We went all the way to the base camp of Amayangri, to a village called Takayang. I had this vision of Nepal with prayer flags everywhere. And it was just that. As we came out of the city and we went through these little villages and went through the mountains, the prayer flags were just everywhere, just floating in the wind. And the reason they do that is so that the wind carries the prayers through the mountains and through Nepal. We crossed waterbeds, we went up crazy rutted inclines, we went through villages. It was probably about 4.5 hours, I think, to get to Takayang. We had a walk into the village and we found this beautiful temple that hadn't quite been finished, but we were lucky enough to sort of look around and see it, and it was just stunning. And that was where I sort of got my first feeling of peace, because the temples were beautiful and sacred in Kathmandu, but being in one of these Buddhist temples in the Himalayas, 4 hours from anywhere, with beautiful, stunning views, that's where I sort of really found some peace. I left Takeshi and just walked back by myself and just sort of had a moment, because it was just, yeah, kind of reflected on, I'm here. My God, I'm actually here. I'm, 16 hours from home. I'm in the depths of the Himalayas. I'm at least 4 hours away from civilization. And I know over the next 9 days, we're going to go even further away. The next morning we got up and we took this almost enduro track up to the second Amayangri base camp. I think it was about 3,500 meters. And at this point, Uday and Grace had came with us, but they were going to tail off, and then it was going to be just myself and Takeshi for the next 8 days. But Uday just sort of raced off. He said, look, you can't go wrong. Just follow the track. Takeshi and Grace will follow us later. Just keep following it. And I did. And it was epic. It was only about 45 minutes, but it was super steep. Crazy ruts, mud everywhere, and it was like I was back in Wales, like doing this crazy enduro, but in Nepal. I remember laughing and joking into my helmet that this is what I'm here for. It was amazing. Some four-wheel drives got stuck, they couldn't go any further, and we're sort of riding around them, and people are trying to hike up to this second base camp. We get to this base camp, and the clouds are in, and there was all these sort of huts, and people were living there just to serve hikers and mountaineers, but I mean, they're living in tents, not any kind of building. We took about half an hour up there and just sort of sucked up what we just accomplished, and then headed back down into day 3. And that was basically following a riverbed. And I'm talking, massive boulders and steep declines, and a couple of small river crossings, because we were out of monsoon season. In monsoon season, it would have just been crazy gushing water. You couldn't go near it, but we were out of monsoon season, so we could also literally ride along the riverbed. I started to see these bridge crossings, and that's something that I'd always wanted to do. When I kind of got back into adventure riding, I started to follow a rider called Adam Raymond. He'd made a film in Nepal 3 or 4 years ago. We went with his father. It was a beautiful journey, and they crossed this bridge. And then once you've seen that, it's like, I need to cross this river bridge. And we spotted a few, but there just wasn't a way to get to it. But I'd said at this point to Takeshi, can we do this? This would be quite a lifelong, can we do this? And he said, yeah, but maybe day 3 or day 4, because there's better ones, there's bigger ones. We stopped a few times with some locals for some street food and some lunch. And the kindness in Nepal, I think a lot of people talk about it, but it's really hard to portray, because there isn't much in Nepal. Tourism is quite a thing, but it's also been challenging for them. And so there's just this welcoming energy. Everywhere we went, people were just so happy to see you, and inquisitive. It took us about 4.5, 5 hours, all off-road. Not much undulation, but quite challenging tracks to get to Bihar. That night we were in a hotel and we were quite spoiled. I think we finished about 4 o'clock, and we had a meal in the hotel and just got an early night. It was raining a lot, and we had a little bit of road work to get us out of Bidher to get onto the tracks. And we followed a route through the Langtang National Park. And to get there, you've got to sign in and sign out, because that's where Mount Ganesh is and things like this. So they want to know who's coming in. You've got to get your passport out and go through a border check. And this road was just rubble and rocks with a sheer drop into a riverbed. And it was about 3 hours long. And this is the main road that they use out from Bidher to Tibet. So there was coaches coming at us, there was four-wheel drives coming at us, and they don't really care. There's many times where you're sort of, 30 centimeters from the edge of the abyss, and they're beeping at you as if it's your fault. So it was quite something. And you could see as well, because we're in this valley, that these huge rocks had fallen down. And I mean boulders, the size of Land Rovers, were just sort of scattered around this road. And these coaches were coming in and out. And when you came up against one, it was a challenge. So we followed this unpaved road for about two and a half hours, and we stopped in this little village just before Gatlang. It was a climbing route to get to Mount Ganesh, so there was lots of little restaurants that you could stop and have something to eat. Takeshi had sort of said to me, we have to be careful. Your stomach isn't suited for where we are from coming from the West. So you should probably eat two things and that's it. Noodle soup every day for lunch, because they boil the water, so the water's clean. You get a little bit of carb in that way and some energy in you. And then every night we would have dal bat. And dal bat is what they just call mountain power. So it's boiled rice, it's curried lentils, it's curried vegetables, and that's it. So there's not much that can go wrong with it to make you ill, but it gives you the right amount of everything to basically hit the mountains. So I ate that for 11 nights in a row, just to make sure that everything was suitable, and that I didn't run into any stomach problems, which I didn't while I was there. I was absolutely, perfectly fit and healthy the whole time. We came out of that little village, and then we started to climb towards Gatlang. These stunning sort of sandy tracks with switchbacks going through. I remember Takeshi just sort of beeping me, telling me to stop because we didn't have head comms. And he pointed to this plant and said, "Oh, look, you see marijuana." Sorry, what? Is that? It grows wild here, everywhere. I said, "Do the locals smoke it? Like, what is all this?" "No, it's just, occasionally some of the locals smoke it, but actually they drink more than anything." But it just grew wild, which I found quite fascinating. We finally got to the base of Gatlang, this beautiful mountain village. From Kathmandu, it's 3 days ride. If you're going to get there in car or coach, maybe 7 days. So it's really remote. There's no need for money. They live off the land. And there are cows, there is rice fields, and that's it. That's all they have. We pulled up at our lodgings, and this was sort of a mountaineering type lodge, but it was literally plywood dividing cupboards with a kind of tin roof and a whistle for an emergency, and that was it. The shower toilet was just something you would not want to put your worst enemy in. But they had this little dining area outside of it, which again was just plywood and a tin roof. But what was beautiful to see was there was 4 generations of women. So there was this gorgeous little toddler, she was running around. And then her mother was cooking the lunch for us, the late lunch, because we arrived around that time. And then her mother, so the grandmother, sort of came in and picked up the granddaughter and was sort of put her on her shoulders to take her out. And then the great-grandmother came in and started to sort of lay out the table. I asked via Takeshi, how old would the grandmother be? And she said, they have no idea, well over 90. But, she's there serving, helping, carrying rice. And so we ate with them. And then I went a walk, around the village and just took in this beautiful valley. And the clouds hadn't cleared, but Mount Ganesh was in front of us. And being a little bit spiritual myself in the presence of such a sacred mountain, I couldn't wait for day 4 because I knew the clouds were going to clear. There's definitely going to be no petrol station, so how does that work in the Himalayas? Well, in a village, someone will have petrol, but it will be stored in soda bottles, and they'll sell it to you by the litre. Sometimes they'll have a big oil barrel, and I don't know, a 14-year-old literally put a pipe in it, sucked on the petrol, put it into a Mountain Dew bottle, and then we just poured it into the bike. Now, God knows what octane it was. It was probably full of rubbish, but it worked. And we did that every other day. We just filled the bike up from fizzy drink bottles. It was crazy. We set out in the morning, and there was Mount Ganesh, and the clouds had cleared, and it was just humbling with the sun shining and not a cloud in the sky. So we left off with Mount Ganesh behind us, going up the mountain out of Gatlang into the Ruby Valley. This glimmer of gold just caught my eye, and I beeped the horn, and I said to him, "What is that? I've just seen, I think, like a gold statue." And he said, that's the temple of Gatlang that looks over Gatlang. I said, "Is there any way we can get in there, without causing offences?" "No, absolutely, of course, it's actually not quite finished." To say my breath was taken away was an absolute understatement. Mount Ganesh was in front of me, clear sun shining over it, and then to my right, standing 10 meters high, was a giant gold Buddha. Down to the right, and I forget the name, was some sacred water. And I just remember looking around and almost a tear come into my eye, and it just took my breath away. And the emotions came up, and I was just at peace in the wilderness, in absolute awe. God knows what Takeshi thought I was doing. I just sat there and just sat there for about 15 minutes. I'm not religious in any way, but in that moment, it was just nature that filled my soul. It was amazing. The Ruby Valley riding was incredibly technical. It was ups and downs. Jeep tracks turned into no tracks. The ruts were just 2-3 foot deep. I came off for the first time that day. We were coming down an ascent, and it was like this clay, muddy, really sticky, slippy soil. And I mean sticky by you could hold it and grab together. And I just remember coming down and just sort of catching the front wheel and coming off, and I was fine apart from my ego. But it was because we were so high, the air got so thin. There'd been a big forest fire up there, so there was a lot of dead trees, a bit of an eerie feeling, and there was a freshness in the air and a restriction, because 4,500 meters, you feel that. And then sort of coming down into this rocky wilderness, which then, as we went down even further, turned into this sort of forest. And then we kind of got to the bottom of that valley, and we had to come back up again to get around this pass to get to the next village. One of the resources, it's almost like a talcum powder that they mine in Nepal, and it was like quicksand. It was so hard to riding. I think in Morocco, in the Paris Dakar, they call it fesh, because it's so light you just sink. And it was just like that. And at this point, it's about 35 degrees. And I just remember just sweating out, fighting the bike. Uphill is so much easier on a bike than downhill, trying to control it with the weight of your belongings on the back. The front end all, squibbling everywhere. And we were just shattered, like absolutely knackered. I think we rode 6 hours until we got to lunch. We found this little mountain shack. Guy cooked us up some noodles. And I think we both sat there for about, I don't know, an hour, just trying to get all the sweat off and just trying to rehydrate as best as we could. We had about another 3 or 4 hours of coming through the valley to our next stop, and we knew that we were heading to Barak, but we had to do a stopover before we got there. So that night we literally stopped in someone's house, effectively. So again, we had to follow a valley a little bit, and on that day we saw beautiful, stunning waterfalls coming down into the valley. And then we had to climb back up to Barak. That route, it was Jeep track, but they were making it or remaking it, because every time the monsoon comes, whatever tracks they have basically wash away. So they have, and I don't know how they get there, but they have these big diggers in the middle of nowhere, like recreating the Jeep tracks sometimes. And if you were a car, you'd be stuck there for weeks, because they're just there and they can't move. They just dig the track as they go, up they go. So you can only get by on a motorbike. There's sort of a 2,000 meter drop this edge, sand and rock and rubble here, and a digger here with the arm and the cradle moving around, and you just kind of got to navigate it, and they've got to get you through to get past, to keep going. It was a bit somber when we got up to Barak, because it was the epicenter of a huge earthquake. Lots of people lost their lives. The whole village just crumbled in on itself. Day 6, I had no idea what was in store for me. It was just the most epic day. Apart from epic trails, epic jeep tracks, up and down, elevation, river crossings, everything you can hope for as an adventure rider. Out the corner of my eye, I saw this bridge crossing, and it was huge. It was, I don't know, 200 meters, maybe 300 meters across this huge riverbed. And I beeped to Takeshi. I was like, it's this one. And as the bike gets onto it, it starts to move. I've dreamed about crossing this bridge and being, 100 meter up above this riverbed, and then the thing starts rocking and moving, and oh my God, I've got to really stabilize the bike. And it was sort of a moment of awe and concentration all in one, and just feeling so alive, but also that element of fear as well. I'm on this bridge and it's all rocking around, but yeah, it was just a real moment. We crossed the bridge, and then I stopped and I looked back and I was like, that's it, that's one of the bucket lists ticked for sure. Coming into Gorka, it turned a bit jungly. It was really hot again because of the time of the year, but we were starting to get shaded by some of the trees, and I felt like I was in the Amazon at this moment. And that's the beauty of Nepal, is you've got this rough, rugged wilderness at altitude, and then you've got these, high running rivers and riverbeds, and these sprawling, crazy cities. But then you've got like this jungle terrain, and then this sand, and it's just a bit of everything. I mean, it's an absolute dream to ride. Riding in Nepal is like riding in all these different countries all around the world in one. We got to Gorka, and I'm not religious, but maybe I'm spiritual. Being in Gorka Palace, it felt safe. And we were walking around, and then we could hear this drumming, this constant do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And he said there's a sacred stone under the palace, which you have to go down these steps to. And very rarely, very occasionally, there will be a shaman in there that is offering to the stone and then offering to the people. As we turned around there was just this queue of maybe 100 people to get in to see this sacred stone and to be blessed by the shaman. And they'd been there for like 6 a.m. At this time, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So they'd just been there all day, and he's ready when he's ready. And Takeshi said, look, you can come down and look. We're not going to bypass the queue. You can come down and look, but you can't go in. Westerners, we won't be allowed in, but you can come and look and just be very courteous and mindful. I was like, absolutely. So we kind of walked down to this step to where we could see into the cave. And all of a sudden the drumming stopped. At that moment, I was like, okay, we better get out of here. And I turned around, and this Nepalese woman grabbed me by the shoulder and turned me back around and said, no, you go in. And I said, and I feel myself getting emotional now. I was like, no, I can't go in. My guide said, no, she said, you go in. And I said, no, all the people, the queuing, no. She's like, you need to go in. And this was via Takeshi, via translation, It's like, no, they're telling you, if they're telling you, go in. So walked into this smoke-filled cave where, I don't know how to describe the shaman, but if you can imagine someone, deeply spiritual, just in the moment of delivering this ceremony, and it was crazy hot and it was crazy smoky and there was so much incense and I couldn't really see, but my senses were completely overwhelmed. But I walked in and I didn't know what to do. I had no idea what to do, and Takeshi just whispered in my, bow down and give an offering, and then you'll be given a blessing and an offering. So what do I give? And it's like, you give money. You can just give, anything, nothing too much. It's for the palace. It's for the shaman. So I make the offering, and he blesses me. So he has a mix of cumin and various spices and blesses on the forehead, and then gives me this sacred bread and makes an offering. And I was just absolutely blown away. Felt this huge sense of, again, at being at peace, being still, couldn't hear anything around me. And I kind of walked out again feeling to the point of tears, but not sadness, just pure emotion. And we sit on the steps, and then all of a sudden there's these 3 eagles start flying around. For me, eagles represent spirituality. And then all of a sudden the clouds clear, and there's Mount Manslu right in front of me. I was like, I don't know what's going on, but this is some crazy kind of awakening, or I don't know. And then, the floodgates open, and I was in floods of tears. It's like, I've come to one of the most sacred buildings in Nepal. I've been blessed by a shaman. I've got, my eagle spiritual animal flying around, and then the clouds have cleared, and there's Mount Manslu. I was just in awe, absolute awe. This is adventure. This is this is what I came for, you know, to be so far removed from daily life, to feel what it's like to be completely present. I think most bikers would resonate. You put the helmet on and it's like a shield for your brain. It's like moving meditation. And so it's like all those thoughts that you get every day, those recurring thoughts, negative, positive, whatever. It's like the helmet, you put it on, it's like a shield. And most of them are gone. And then the moment you twist the throttle and away you go, I enter into a flow state. And that's just peace. And in that moment, I just reflected on all of it, you know, what the motorcycle had given to me, what the journey had given to me, what Nepal had given to me. And it just made me very aware of what I am and who I am and what kind of purpose, you know, what is life, it's these moments. That's what life is, it's these moments. I think that was my ultimate day. You know, it wasn't necessarily the best day riding, it wasn't necessarily the best terrain, but it was just the accumulation of all of it in that one moment really kind of took my breath away. Lucky for us, that night was a hotel, and it was nice to get a proper night's sleep and to be able to, reflect on it all. It was just sort of grit and endurance that day. The trails were super hard. The weather was 35, 36 degrees in the valley. I think that day we rode for 12 hours and we only stopped once. I ran out of water twice. And I was just absolutely shattered, like beyond shattered. I just wanted a bed. And we turned up at this hostel and I walked into the room and I was like, oh, really? The floor, they'd made like AstroTurf was the carpet. The bed was a bench with an exposed sponge top. The bathroom, I saw 4 cockroaches running around, just, you know, happy as Larry. The window wouldn't shut. We were near a rice field, so there was going to be mosquitoes. And it was just one of those moments like, come on. Like, really, after 12 hours riding, this is it? We had a silk sleeping bag liner that I was advised to use if there was sheets, because you can't guarantee they're clean, you can't guarantee there aren't bed bugs and everything. It's natural antiseptic effectively. And the one I bought was super skinny, and I'm not the best sleeper anyway. My legs are twitchy, I'm tired, there's cockroaches in the bathroom, there's spiders on the ceiling, there's mosquitoes trying to get in to bite me. And I'm lying on this bed in this silk sleeping bag liner, not at all comfy, but absolutely shattered. But out of 11 days away, 9 days riding, 900 kilometers off road, one down moment, I think that's not too bad. And of course there were moments when I really missed the family, but it's good to miss your family, it's good to be missed, and it's good to be away, to be and find yourself. The last 2 days were such a mix of riding, going through rice fields, staying with locals, and the terrain changed again, where it just went super sandy, not like day 4 and 5 where it was like this talcum powder, but it was sand, but at altitude. And it was really steep inclines, and it was really technical, really challenging to get up and around, especially in the heat. But I knew it was coming to an end, and I just wanted to suck it all up. We always finished at sort of late lunch, late afternoon, so we had the evening to relax and reflect. But on those 2 days, I said to Takeshi, can we ride again? Can we go somewhere again? He said, of course. So we took all the luggage off, and it was just, the bike, me, and the helmet, and the armor, and that was it. No heavy luggage, so we could really ride freely. Takeshi said, I think there's a track over there. I don't know, I haven't planned it, so let's just go get lost. And that's exactly what we did. We just went and got lost. And we just sort of rode, and we found a military base, and they told us to turn around and go somewhere else, and then we ended up in this other village, and I think we rode for about 3 hours. It was just single track all the way, no jeep track, single track. And we even found this viewing point that viewed over the valley that you could walk up and just get this huge sort of 360. God knows who built it, when they built it, and who for, but it was there, and we found it in the middle of this sort of high up jungle among waterfalls. That was different because every day we had an end destination. Every day was we start here, we end here. Whereas those 2 afternoons was, let's just have some fun. found some little jumps. We got the drone out and filmed some of these things, and just had fun, played in nature, took in the surroundings, and just, you know, really went for it. Probably, you know, maybe a bit faster than we'd been before. And that was a lot of fun. It was a nice mix of feeling the mountains and being humbled and feeling quite spiritual to just playing around on bikes and having fun on the tracks. We were about 4 hours out from Kathmandu, and we stayed at this little yoga center actually, which sort of had a pool. I was like, oh my God, it's got a pool. So like for the first time in 9 days, it was sort of, wasn't a hose pipe or a leaky shower tap on the wall or just a wash in the basement. It was like this pool. I remember sort of just, you know, jumping in that and just submersing myself and like just feeling clean for the first time in like 9 days. And we set off a bit later because we knew we had time to get into Kathmandu. It was actually pretty challenging because we had to go up and over a ridge to drop back into Kathmandu. And I felt a bit sad. This is the last day. I was starting to reflect. And I remember talking into my camera, into my helmet, sort of just reflecting on the journey.
The pool is just stunningly beautiful. People are incredibly welcoming, incredibly grateful and humble. The scenery is just beyond it. You know, it's rugged, but you can't take your eye off the road or off the track and it'll bite you. I got what I came for, you know, I came for adventure or epicness, silence, peace, a bit of freedom, you know, disconnection, connection to myself, and I found it all. You know, I feel like I even found my purpose. I had an absolute awakening of sorts, meeting a shaman, which, you know, just came out of the absolute blue, and oh man, that blew my mind and opened my eyes to my own ways and the way to live, the way not to live. You know, and I'm not going to be a monk tomorrow, that's for sure. I want to slow down, but I want my nice things, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, huh? Worked hard for it, and I want my comfy bed, and I want to ride my Ducati. But I do want to slow life down. With a bike you can just feel the elements, you feel the heat, you get the smells, all the environment around you. It makes you feel alive, right? You feel the bumps, you feel the terrain, you feel the weather, the hot, the cold, the wet. Get all the smells, nature's aircon, nature's sauna, just you and the elements. You can pretty much ride through anything on a bike. The freedom to feel, and to feel the freedom. So I guess I just want to say thank you to Nepal, to the people, to the mountains, to the nature, to all of it.
Riding down into Kathmandu, and behind me was this epic 9 days of off-road, 900 kilometers, and in front of me was the sprawling, crazy city of Kathmandu. And then I remember the sadness just dropping away and being like, that's it, there's your adventure. That's what you know, everything does come to an end, and that was it, that was the moment. And you know, we got stuck back into the hustle and bustle of Kathmandu, dropped the bike off, parted farewell with Sagarmatha that had done me so well over 900 kilometers off road. We had to look at the fuel filter once change the brake pads once, and adjust the handlebars once, and that was it. No punctures, no breakdowns. We threw everything at this little Honda CRF 250, and it just survived it all. And it was underpowered, you know, on the real altitude, on the mountain passes, trying to get it out of first gear was like a no-go. But I just thank this little bike, you know, it got me through everything. Been given the most probably contaminated fuel ever, but it had given me my adventure, and it got me back home. Had a nice sort of farewell dinner with Takeshi and just reflected on what it was. And for him, it was, he'd never done that before either. He'd always been with a group, with a support truck, taken it slower, taken less Jeep tracks, always planned the route more and hit more tarmac. And so it was really nice to feel and hear from someone that does this for a job to really say, that was something. We got lost. But I also found myself in getting lost. There can be a misconception when people go off on these big adventures. People think they're going to get lost or lose themselves. But it's actually where you find yourself, going out into that wilderness, to be humbled by those mountains, to sit in that awe. I wasn't going to escape nature. I wasn't going to escape the world. It was finding it and then finding myself in it. And that was my journey.